Real Estate Investing Profits presents Profit Masters with your host, world-renowned real estate coach and investor, Corey Boatwright. Now, strap in and get ready to learn elite wealth-building investment strategies taught by 6- and 7-figure house flipping masters as they reveal their best real estate investing profit secrets to you right now.
All right, how you doing today? Hope you're going to have a phenomenal, productive, fun day. This is Corey Boatwright. I am the founder of Real Estate Investing Profits and your host for Profit Master podcast series. And I have an incredible guest. His name is Daren Blomquist. He's actually the Vice President of RealtyTrac. If you've never heard of RealtyTrac, you're going to get some great links and some resources that are going to blow you away in this interview. And this interview is different than what you've probably seen with Daren on CBS, ABC, CNN, CNBC, Fox Business, and Bloomberg, USA Today, New York Times. I mean, he is all over the place, the Wall Street Journal. You're going to be blown away by really understanding how data plays into your real estate investing business. I like to call Daren a data adventurist. You'll hear me go through a couple of different terms, even a data scientist. He has got a fascinating story. He started in 2001 at RealtyTrac. He thought it was just going to be a little journalistic job. He ended up staying there for over 14 years, still there today. He is directly responsible for the creation of the company's U.S. foreclosure market and sales reports, which are cited by thousands of media outlets nationwide, including all of those major news networks that I mentioned before and the leading publications such as the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, USA Today. He has been quoted in hundreds of national local publications. He's appeared on many national network broadcasts. You've probably seen him again on Bloomberg and Fox Business. And Daren, he interfaces with numerous government agencies at the national, state, and local level and is a sought-after speaker at industry events, including the past year at an Inman Connect and the U.S. Treasury short sale training event. He's been at 5-Star. He's been at Impact, Georgia Association of Real Estate and Realtors, California Mortgage Association, Mortgage Service News, Equity Trust Networking Conference. The list goes on and on. Just get strapped in because you're getting ready to absolutely be blown away by this interview. By the way, he's also a graduate of Trinity International University in Chicago and holds a degree in English communications. So the guy is pretty academic and a pretty smart cookie. Make sure that you download our free investor guide. If you haven't got it, make sure you text the word profit to 38470 and you'll get it right away. Okay, get strapped in because you're going to love this interview. Here is Daren. Daren, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Corey.
I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. I know that, you just eat bonbons and sit on the couch eating Cheetos and don't really do anything all day, right?
Right. Yeah. So I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs waiting for you to call, and I'm glad that you...
No, obviously, you have got some incredible things going on with RealtyTrac, which I think most people listening have heard about. And it has to do with not really being a real estate investor, but on the side of being in data, which is probably even more important because as an investor, you need to have the most qualified leads. And I know that whenever you are following these trends, it's incredible to see how things kind of repeat and how investors can really start studying data to get better results in their business. And I appreciate you taking the time to be on here. Would you mind just go ahead and talking about a little bit who you are, what your position is right now at RealtyTrac, and what you're involved in RealtyTrac company?
Sure. Yeah, my title is Vice President of RealtyTrac. And really what I am is I'm the spokesperson for the company and in charge of combing through the data and putting out reports based on trends that we're seeing in the real estate data, which is honestly a pretty fun job to have. Now we have a lot of deadlines. We're releasing a report a week, so we're on deadline all the time to look at the data, get something shipped out. Wednesdays typically can be a very busy day for us because we're putting the report out on Thursday, and usually we send it out to the media in advance, and so we're doing interviews with the media all day. So one of the things that I'll talk about maybe the question coming up about running a team is how that's played into things today specifically, but philosophically. But yeah, that's what I do. I get to play in the sandbox of our data, which is not just foreclosure data. A lot of folks know RealtyTrac is a foreclosure data source, which we are.
Right.
But over the past year and a half, we have greatly expanded our data universe to include all mortgage records, all sales deeds records, all property assessor records. And we're really only one of 3 companies to be able to have full license to distribute that data. So that's pretty exciting to be able to get my hands on that.
Wow.
And put out some new stuff using that data.
So you deal in the data side. What made you want to be involved in RealtyTrac? How did that kind of happen?
It was one of those incidents where it was, it was not planned. It was not strategic. I went to school to be a newspaper reporter, a journalist. And the first year and a half, I was in Illinois and working at a small newspaper there. And my wife and I decided, hey, we're in the middle of the cornfields of Illinois. We don't have any family out here. Let's move somewhere where we do have family. And that was California for her. And so we moved out here. And honestly, RealtyTrac was a temp position. I was looking for a real job, with a newspaper. And while I was doing that, I didn't like to be sitting around twiddling my thumbs. So I applied for some temp positions. RealtyTrac was one of those. It was a startup at the time. There was literally about 5 people at the company. I was answering phones, talking to customers, and I thought this will be something I do for a couple weeks.
How long was that?
And that was in 2001.
2001. Wow. Okay.
And I thought this will be 2 weeks, but it's turned into 14 years, I guess now, which is crazy. And I've been able to really grow with the company, which has been exciting.
That's incredible. 14 years. So you just love data? I mean, have you always loved data? Has that just been your thing, or did you?
I was a journalist, so I loved figuring out how things work.
Right.
And not necessarily from a mechanical standpoint or anything like that, but understanding stories and what's behind things that you see on the surface. And so it was a natural fit. About 2005 at RealtyTrac, we started up a program, a PR program, to really talk about all this data that we had. And at the time, it was just foreclosure data. And nobody was talking about foreclosures. It was kind of what we called the hidden market. And so it was a great fit for me to say, okay, I can use a lot of my journalism skills to attack this data as a journalist and say, what's the story behind the trends that we're seeing and this data? How can we pull stories out of that and tell stories about what's happening in the U.S. real estate market and what's happening with individual real estate buyers and investors using this data as a launching pad.
So as an aggregate startup, right? That was the whole idea of just take all this data, be an aggregate for it, and not really an idea at that point of like monetization or what you're going to do, but you just wanted to take this data. And did you want to sell the data and rent the data? Is that one of the ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. The data is the core of our business. And at the time, we had a subscription product for people to come, and we still do, but we've expanded for people to come in and subscribe to get full access to this foreclosure data, which is off-market properties that you can buy at the courthouse steps. And many of, I'm sure your students use this data to go and during the heyday of foreclosures, buy. That was one of the strategies of buying properties. And so we wanted to draw attention to the fact that we had this foreclosure data through talking about it and the trends. And there was a lot of lucky timing, fortunate timing there.
Right.
where we started talking about foreclosures in 2005, and they really took off in around 2007, and we became the go-to source. Nobody else was talking about foreclosures and had the data at the national level like we did.
Right.
And that brought a lot of prominence to RealtyTrac during those years.
That's when I started seeing RealtyTrac really pop up. I started to focus heavily on short sales in 2007, 8, 9. I mean, just it exploded, right? And I started to see RealtyTrac pop up more and more and more and all over these different sites and advertising. Like, who are these RealtyTrac guys? And actually, I want to talk about why using RealtyTrac. I know that investors are great at just finding data and going to mine it themselves, right, manually. But using your data can provide an advantage for them. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But who was your biggest influence? I'm curious at RealtyTrac. Whenever you were there, you saw somebody that you wanted to follow, or did you have a mentor or someone there at RealtyTrac that kind of showed you the way of or a vision of what they wanted to do with the company?
Absolutely. And I'll throw out if I'm allowed to, I'll throw out a couple answers to that.
Sure.
My initial answer, which is still very true, is when we started this PR program in 2005, talking about the trends in the foreclosure data, I was brought on to help with that by Rick Sharga, who was the spokesperson of the company at the time. And I worked under him, I think it would have been about 7 or 8 years, and he really just taught me a lot about how to be a spokesperson and talk. I was coming from the journalistic perspective, which is very good because I knew what journalists were looking for and what they wanted to talk about. But he really showed me how to talk to them with authority. And because the best piece of advice that sticks with me is as he was getting ready to move on and I was kind of taking on the mantle, he said, just remember, you know more than anybody else in the room about this topic.
That's a great
anywhere
piece
you
of
go.
advice. That's a great piece of advice. That gives you a lot of confidence.
Yeah. And because it was great because I had the opportunity to watch him, but then also start. I was the guy behind the curtain every month when we put out the report, pulling the data and really digging through the data, and then kind of helping him develop the talking points of what that was going to be. But I learned so much during those years about foreclosure. And then to branch out on that, I would say, and this may sound a little cheesy, but one of the biggest influences over those years, and actually earlier on in RealtyTrac, I told you I was answering the phones and talking to our customers.
Right.
And a lot of those customers were real estate investors who back in 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5 were heavy into investing.
Sure.
And foreclosures were rare back then, but they were looking for them. And just like foreclosures are rare now. But I learned a lot just by talking. I remember many conversations with real estate investors who would just talk to me about what they were doing, how they were using our data, and how they were being successful with it. And I would say they were a big influence on me that this is an really interesting, compelling business to be in, to be providing data to these folks who are having such an impact on the housing market.
Sure. So Rick was one of those guys for you. He was really the guy that you learned a lot from.
Yep, absolutely. And we still stay in touch. I just actually got an email from him today, and he continues. He instilled a lot of confidence in me, and that was great, and allowed me to just observe him doing what he did.
Sure.
And that really helped.
Using RealtyTrac, this is really important. What I usually talk to our guests about what we call our Profit Master, their Profit Master investing strategy. And for you, it's a little different because you're on the data side. So I want to ask you about what is your kind of Profit Master investing strategy that you've learned with investors using RealtyTrac. because I think that's where the listeners now that maybe haven't heard of RealtyTrac, they're interested in that. And the ones that have, maybe they don't know a few things that they can do using the data. So can you elaborate a little bit on
Sure.
Where you found like an advantage point for using RealtyTrac?
Yeah, and I've talked to so many investors over the years and learned so much. Wow, these guys are creative entrepreneurs, and they're doing things with our data that I would have actually never thought of. A couple things. This goes back a while, but just to talk about the foreclosure data, and then I'll talk about some of the other data. One gentleman I remember in Minnesota, this was several years ago, but it really stuck with me, that I thought was very creative was in using the foreclosure data, is to go after Minnesota is a redemption state where the homeowner has the option to redeem after the property after it's been foreclosed. There's a handful of those states out there.
Yeah, it's like is it a year or 6 months? Is it a year?
I think in Minnesota it's a year.
A year, okay.
That's kind of the typical one. So it's a pretty long time, but he would go and find the homes that had been foreclosed on our site, but he knew the bank couldn't sell them until that redemption period was over.
Right.
And then he would approach the homeowner, which we have that information on the website, and say, I'd like to buy your redemption rights, and buy those for, the homeowner at that point had lost, in their mind, very few homeowners are going to redeem the property because you have to come up with
virtually none, all amount plus all the fees, everything. Right.
So yeah, he would approach them, buy the redemption rights, and then go to the bank before they listed it and redeem the property, which I thought was a very, very cool and creative way. And it actually was helping out these homeowners who were walking away with nothing to show. At least they had something there to walk away with, which I thought was cool. We have a guy named Court in our mastermind that does this, our real estate mastermind, that does something very similar to this. So I'm familiar with this strategy, but keep going and talk about it a little bit. Yeah, I'm guessing I probably can't share with you much that you haven't heard before.
Well, there's a lot of things I haven't heard before, but I know that you're in the thick of it. I love hearing on the other side of this. You're seeing how the data is used for this type of investing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people also just use our data to identify trends. And one conversation sticks with me from a gentleman in New York who was investing in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And he was just constantly combing over, not necessarily using it for leads, which a lot of investors do to find those leads, but using it to identify what the market down to the zip code level was doing and where he should be investing.
Right.
And I've talked to many people like that. This guy stuck out to me because I remember him saying, I was talking to him on the phone. He was talking about, I'm talking to you from the Trump Tower here in New York where I sit over. He sounded so much like an investor. But so that's another way people use our data, is just identifying, okay, for instance, where are the foreclosures going up? And New York actually is a good example of that. Where are there opportunities? Where are sales? What's the sales numbers look like? What are the home price numbers look like beyond just the trends you might see in the news, and using that to identify down at a very granular level where they should be investing. And then the third example I'll give real quick is just someone I talked to a couple days ago in San Diego who, San Diego is a classic example of a market where foreclosures are very scarce again, like they were 10 years ago when I started at RealtyTrac. Right. So there's still a great opportunity, but this guy, he's using our data not to look for foreclosure so much as to find these off-market properties, which I'm sure you hear about a lot as well.
Sure.
And we have a really cool, I think it's a best kept secret, a RealtyTrac. It's mega.realtytrac.com. And you can go there.
We'll put that in the show notes, by the way, too. mega.realtytrac.com.
Yeah. And basically it gives you access to filter all 119 million properties that we have data on nationwide.
That's incredible.
And narrow it down to the 200 people that you think are the most likely to be motivated sellers who may not be listing their property for sale yet, and identifying based on equity. Of course, I mean, foreclosure status is in there, but a lot of these people are not in foreclosure. Equity, how long they've owned the home. We even have demographic information in there, whether the home is owner occupied, and we have the mailing address of the homeowner if they're not, so you can identify out-of-state homeowners, how many loans the property has, who owns the loans, what banks own the loans, and there's quite a few other filters that you can apply to narrow down 119 million properties to the 100 or 200 properties that you think in your market are going to be the most likely to be leads for you.
Right.
And that's really been a powerful tool for a lot of folks.
That's great. That is really powerful information. I noticed when you go to mega.realtytrac.com, it goes to marketinglist.realtytrac.com. So
yeah, we recently rebranded that, and I apologize. I know it as Mega. We're calling it Marketing List because that's a little bit more clear about what it actually is.
Sure.
But you're basically creating lists of people you want to market to.
Right.
And for investors, that's a lot of times in this market, in places like San Diego, that's the off-market folks who maybe have some type of trigger or some series of triggers that make them motivated to sell.
Sure. Okay. So, and you can create a free account there as well, right?
Yeah, it's free. A lot of it is free. You can go in there and play around, see how many properties match your criteria, and you can try different criteria. And then once you want to actually get the list, it's only 15 cents a record, so it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
To buy the list, and you get the names, and of course the address of the property, the mailing address of the homeowner if it's different than the property, and then we have tools. That's all 15 cents a record. If you want to add on phone numbers and email addresses, you can contact one of our customer service reps, and they can help you do that as well.
And it just adds in kind of a la carte on the pricing.
Yes, because that's not everything in there is directly from the public record data that we're not altering. But then public record data does not have email addresses and phone numbers. So we're using other services to add that on a la carte, as you say, and there will be an extra charge for that.
Gotcha. That's great. And we'll put that in the show notes to make sure that everyone can access that. I have a question, and you alluded to this in the beginning. Let's go back to it. What does it take to really, or what's your advice for running a successful, not just business, but on your side, a successful data team, a successful real estate data team, Daren?
Yeah, I've learned so much about real estate data, and one couple piece of advice. I'm always going above and beyond your questions, but
it's okay.
I have to have people who are on my team or helping out on my team who know stuff that I don't know, who are experts in areas that I'm not an expert in. For instance, we have a whole team of folks here who are database engineers and who know how to handle huge, massive amounts of data. Our entire file that we can license to people, and this is to the big not to individual real estate investors necessarily, but to companies and government entities who want this real estate data, it's a terabyte of data. So it's a huge, massive file.
Right.
And we have to have people on the team who know how to manage data, which I am not an expert at. And so that's a key.
I have a cool term. They're not just data engineers, but data scientists.
Data scientists, yep.
One guy that we work with on our side is a data scientist. I think that's
a hot job right now. We're actually looking for some more of those.
Yes.
Because it really applies to us. Because it's more about just managing the data in a database, but what we love to have is people who are passionate about the data,
right,
and want to see trends in the data. Kind of that journalistic curiosity that I talked about earlier.
Sure.
You don't just kind of glaze over when they're looking at the data and say, "Oh, that's an interesting correlation. Why are, we did something interesting recently." We try to throw out some fun stuff once in a while, but we used our data to determine what's the best day of the year to buy a home. And we looked at the average sale price versus average market value. Say, over the last 15 years, what day of the year have people realized the best discount when they're buying a home?
And this overall, just nationwide, not state to state, just overall.
Yeah, overall, although we didn't narrow it down by market, but you want to guess what day it was?
A part of me wants to say summer, because everyone's out looking for houses, but that's the obvious choice. So I'm going to go with the counterintuitive, which would be in December.
You're close. It was actually this month, just a few days ago, October 8th.
Wow.
Was the best day to buy a home. So
October 8th.
That's just a fun example of.
And that was based on crunching data, really crunching it down to find all the different data points on where to. Yeah,
we looked at 32 million sales for that analysis over the last 15 years.
Wow.
And said, and it may not really be a huge application to real life, but that's the kind of curiosity I want on the team.
I like that.
The other thing is really just that I've had to really grow in is delegating and learning to grow the people under me to do the things that I'm doing.
Right.
So I can grow myself. And I alluded to this earlier, but one of the things I was proud about today is I was speaking at a real estate conference in Los Angeles. And Wednesday is typically the day where we do interviews with the media, but I was able to hand that off to another person on the team who's been growing up in that area. Just like Rick grew me up in that area, I'm learning to do that with other people on the team. And that's actually brings a lot of freedom. Part of me, wants to hold on to the things that I always do and I've always done, but that's brought a lot of freedom is learning to hand over and help those people grow. And that then frees me up to do other things as well.
There's two things I like to comment on really quickly. Whenever you're talking about the data team and who you're looking for, this kind of person comes to my mind of a data adventurist, right? Where they just want to go on these new adventures and figure things out. So I think that's great to be able to have that perspective on not just finding somebody that's skilled at one thing, but also someone that has creativity that really wants to explore data. That's a different kind of person. So the creative side of them and a data person kind of tend to not, they're kind of the opposite sides, but you're kind of looking for that spot in the middle, that little gray spot in the middle where they have a little bit of both. I think that's fantastic. And also,
it's honestly a bit hard to find because those data folks tend to be a little more straight and analytical
right.
and mixing in that creativity.
Right.
But it's a wonderful thing when we can find that.
No sense of humor and just all this, monotone. But here's the other thing too. You're talking about an apprentice now of really finding somebody to take your spot, or you're teaching someone to be able to grow. And so you can kind of oversee their different ventures and their different things, and just kind of be at a different altitude per se of management style. And I think that's really powerful. One of the things that I'll share with you, a lesson that I learned that has helped me greatly with business ventures is whenever I let go of control, I got more of it, which is very counterintuitive sounding because you want to hold on to control and then you think you get more of it. What I found is that it's almost like holding on to a cactus. The tighter you hold on to it, it just hurts you more. And that's not the way to grow. So most people I know that run big businesses and different successful positions in different businesses, they have this altitude that you talked about of really overseeing different people to handle different positions. And they're still a part of things, but just in a different way. They're not so much the mechanic of it. They're more the overseer of it. So just something to add.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah.
Well,
I'm learning that.
Yeah. What's your favorite motivational or business quote?
Sure. Yeah. This one, the one that came to mind, I don't know if I have a favorite, but the one that came to mind that especially relates to real estate is something I heard I actually didn't hear him say that, but I heard he did say this. My wife's great-grandfather, who's a great story. He came out to California in a covered wagon and bought some real estate in Long Beach. So it was a great time to buy real estate in California. But one of the things that I heard that he said, and I think this is a pretty common quote, is if you take care of a piece of real estate for 20 years, it will take care of you for your life. And so and he was a brilliant man who owns a good chunk of real estate in Southern California. So I thought, that's been motivational for me in my little personal dabblings in real estate investing as well.
Gotcha. That's great. What books do you recommend, or have one particular really changed your view or changed your life even?
The Freakonomics is, I don't know if you've read the Freakonomics books. I love those. And I just read recently Think Like a Freak, where instead of just talking about the things they've done, they say, here's how you think like a freak in whatever you do, and think outside the box, basically, which is oversimplifying it.
Right.
That was great. Another book I read recently, which was very, I would recommend, is David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
And by the way, I should say the Bible is a huge influence for me. So I love that he used a biblical reference in there. But really applying some of the principles from the interaction of David and Goliath to what we do. And one of the main takeaways for me is what we often view as weaknesses can actually be some of our biggest strengths, or cause us to become strong because of those weaknesses. So that's been a really influential book that I've thought a lot about over the last 6 months or so.
That's great. That's great. What is one of your favorite mobile apps, or what's a mobile app that you use in your business every day?
This one might be kind of boring, but Twitter is, and actually specifically I use Hootsuite to do Twitter, but to get the tweets out there and get the social media out there.
Hootsuite just now offered Instagram not too long ago too. So they're great. Hootsuite is I think it's one of those amazing tools that you need to have, especially if you're doing things online so much, where you have to get so many messages out by hitting one button and going out to 50 different social media profiles. And I love it. Hootsuite's great. They have great apps as well that you can add inside their program. That's really good too. What's your morning routine? I'm curious. How do you get up in the morning? How do you kind of get your day started, Daren?
I usually get up relatively early because we're on the West Coast, and a lot of the folks we deal with are on the East Coast. So getting up at 6, which isn't super early, but and I don't do this every day, but I do love to go when I get a chance to go on a run. And every time when I go on a run in the mornings, that leaves me more energized the rest of the day. And then I look through one of the other apps I use that I rely on a lot recently is the Wall Street Journal app. I look through other news too, but Wall Street Journal is the one I go to and really looking through, and they have a great app for consuming the news, especially if you're a subscriber. Yeah. I'm looking through that. And then I'm usually looking through emails before I get to work, get into work. And a lot of times once I hit the ground at work, I don't have a lot of time to be checking and replying to emails. And I get my cup of coffee when I come into work, of course. And that's it. And then one of the things I have been learning a lot in terms of morning routine is I sit down and I'm old-fashioned. I write out my list for the day.
That's great, man.
But in addition to that,
is it a list of 3 things or 5 things? Or do you do it the night before? Or you do it the day of?
I do it the morning, and I take I just list them out as they come to my mind, and then I create another a numbered system next to them saying, okay, here's everything I need to get done, or I think I should get done today, but then I prioritize them.
Okay.
Even if they're not in order, I number them in order of priority, and that helps. And I also leveraging the power of Outlook to set reminders, put things on the calendar so I don't, and live by my calendar, and not as opposed to saying, oh, I can be late for this meeting, I can miss this, but stick to it, and that really keeps me on task and getting what I need to done for the day.
There's a great app called Sunrise, and it's for calendar. And if you haven't downloaded it or used that app, it's fantastic. It works with Google Calendar, which I don't know if you said you use Outlook a lot. I don't know if you're using the calendar aspect of PC or if you use anything in the Mac side, but Sunrise app is fantastic.
I'll definitely check that out.
And it allows you to be able to go in, if you're already a friend with someone on a social network, you can find that person from typing in their name, and it'll pop up. So whenever you set an appointment, it will send a message over to them. You can contact them through the social aspect of it. And there's some other really cool things you can do in there. It connects with multiple calendars, holidays. There's some other things in it, but it's a great app. So if you're curious about that, check out the Sunrise app. It's a good one. What is a great lesson that you've learned to get to where you are today that you can share with the listeners?
Single greatest lesson. That's a tougher one, to come up with a single greatest lesson. But, I think for me, it's where I've gotten today I haven't been necessarily flashy or the best skilled at what I do, but I've been consistent, diligent, hardworking, and just that consistency, I think, has really been a key for me. And even when I don't feel like it, or I don't feel that I'm, making as much of a difference as I'd like to, just continuing to believe in it and give it time, even through the ups and downs, and continue to do what I know is what I should be doing, if that makes sense. The consistency piece I think that's so key. So people will give up on something quicker than they should,
right?
Instead of giving it time to succeed.
So true. We give up so easily, and sometimes we try to make things a lot bigger than what they need to be. Like you said, not to be the most flashy. That can actually be something that really helps you, because I think that after a while, people get kind of tired of the dog and pony show per se. Not that there's anything really wrong with some parts of it, but it's difficult to put on a Vegas act every single time, right? It comes down to a point of where you just you have a result, and here's how you got it, right? And I think that that's one of the great things about RealtyTrac, is that it is such a results-driven platform for data. There's not such a big flashy marketing campaign on it. It's just you have quality, excellent data. And I think that's one of the things that makes you stand apart. I have a question, just a little personal. Yeah. What are you most grateful for?
Yeah, I would say on the very personal side, that would be my salvation as a Christian.
It's great.
And
Amen.
And I can't think of anything bigger than that. And I'm grateful, I guess, a little bit beyond that is the legacy that I've seen from my family and also my wife's family in that area and other areas that I've just grateful to have the legacy of a family, a great family on both sides that I've learned a lot from.
That's great. That's great. Why do you do what you do? Not the what and all the mechanics side, but why? What gets you up in the morning? Why do you do this? Not not a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm excited about doing data," or even running a data team, right? Why do you do this?
I'll answer that on two levels. I mean, one reason on the work side why I do this is because it is fun. I am a data geek, and I love to discover, as you said, a data adventure at heart. I love to be able to go in and discover something that actually could shed light for a lot of people out there as to what's happening in a very important piece of our economy, the housing market, and to be able to get those stories. And it's exciting to be able to hear your work being broadcast on. There is definitely a thrilling part to hear your voice or see your face, and also just to see RealtyTrac on television or hear it on the radio, and say, I had a part in doing that, and this was seen as something that was significant enough and important enough to share with millions of people by that whatever media outlet it is. So it's not exciting every day, and data is not always fun, but I get that thrill out of finding the stories behind the data and communicating those to the world. But of course, on the more personal side, it's my family. I have 3 kids. They, on the days when it's not quite as fun to do what I'm doing, they keep me going as well.
That's great. I bet they do. 3 kids. What are the ages?
They're 9, 7, and 5.
Wow. You got your hands full. Well, I know that their dad's proud of them, they're really proud of their dad, because you're doing some great things. And to speak to what you just said, a friend of mine said, also in our mastermind, real estate mastermind group, Collective Genius, Matt said, those who educate the market dominate the market. And I love that. And I think that you're providing such a quality education that needs to be talked about. Entrepreneurs, real estate investors in general, tend to not just be excited about going into the data. They just want to get stuff done. They just want to go out there and flip a contract or flip a house. And so having that data there is so helpful. And so appreciate it on behalf of all investors for you doing what you do every day. We really appreciate you. How can we help you? What's the best way that we can help you? And what's the best way our listeners can contact you, Daren?
You can help by, there's 2 ways you can help. You can help by using our data and finding creative new ways to leverage our data to help you. And I think one of the best ways to get started is to go to that mega.realtytrac.com I talked about earlier. That's a great place to get a feel for what data we have and how you as an investor might be able to use it to help your business. You can contact me directly. And so the second way to help me personally in what I do for RealtyTrac is to tell me. I love to hear stories from investors about what they see happening in the market. And that helps me when I'm looking at the data, interpret what's going on.
Right.
And so drop me a line anytime. It's just Daren at RealtyTrac.com, Daren at RealtyTrac.com is my email. At Daren J. Blomquist is my Twitter. And
Blomquist is BLOMQUIST.
Yeah, just one O in Blomquist. But I love to hear those stories that add flesh to the bones of the data that we see.
That's great. All right. We'll put all of this in the show notes. We'll have a transcription of this as well, and I'll send you the link so you have it. I hope that you could share it with some of your folks as well. I know that.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it, and I'll share it with our group. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on here. I know you are incredibly busy. We may light it in the beginning just as sarcasm, but I know that you're incredibly busy. I really appreciate what you're doing, Daren. It's been great to get to know you even more and be a part of with our mastermind group, which is where you and I kind of first contacted. each other, and look forward to having you on maybe another few months to talk about some of the other things that are going on in the market. And thank you for taking the time again.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all you do, Corey. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. All right. Well, remember, be a servant. Make sure you check out RealtyTrac, which is mega.realtytrac.com. It actually forwards to marketinglist.realtytrac.com. And RealtyTrac is RealtyTrac, no K, TRAC. I think you're going to be incredibly impressed with what their company's doing. It's really helping investors really all over the United States, but the world. So thank you again, Daren. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, bye now.
You've been listening to another Real Estate Investing Profits Master Podcast Series. To receive your free real estate book, Down and Dirty, Ultimate Real Estate Investing Quick Start Guide, how to quit your job to start flipping houses in 90 days or less, head online and go to realestateinvestingprofits.com. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Real Estate Investing Profits. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode.